Okay, good day. Happy New Year to everybody. This is, as you can see, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty already. It's the first time of the year. So apologize for the technical difficulties. But I think this is going to be a good chat. I'm talking today to Apiwe Nxusani-Mawela, who was meant to be the last guest of 2023, but is now turning up as the first guest of 2024, which is probably even better than it was going to be. Unfortunately, as you can see, Apiwe is having some technical difficulties as well, and we don't have her on camera right now, but she is there. And if we're lucky, the camera will start working later. If not, you just look at me instead and listen to Apiwe. So Apiwe, for those who don't know, is basically she was on, I think Apiwe might be nearly a year and a half ago now. We were talking about African craft brewing and traditional brewing. And Apiwe was on with Kweza from Rwanda and Bature from Nigeria, and talking about, as I said, traditional brewing in Africa and the modern craft brewing and what the beer scene was like. But since then, you've been incredibly busy.
Hi, Brian. I'm sorry about the technical glitch. I think it's just the beginning of the year, still kind of getting used to, it was a good rest. But we're back at it. It was a crazy busy year. Looking forward to 2024.
Yeah. As I mentioned on the introduction, and people should go back and watch those two sessions. I think they were very good. They were very, very informative for me anyway. But you are, as I said, like you're a driving force, not just in South African beer, but across the whole continent. And you have a string of firsts that probably longer than my arm. So maybe what we should do is, before talking about what you're doing now, maybe we should just go back a little bit, and you could kind of introduce how you got into brewing and where you where your career has taken you up to this point.
Yeah. So I'm a microbiologist by profession. I actually got into microbiology or brewing because when I was in high school, I went for an open day, for a career day, where I learned about the study of microbiology and biotechnology through a display that was done at the university at the time. And then I decided to try out this microbiology thing, even though I didn't know what it was. Ended up actually working for SAB, South African Breweries, recruited through their graduate recruitment program, trained as a brewer. I think my first was my first of the first was when I completed my national diploma in clear fermented beverages, which is actually the brewing qualification in South Africa. So I was the first South African to complete a brewing qualification and be accredited in the country. I then stayed with the breweries, trained, moved up within the ranks. And then 7 years, 8 years later, I actually left. I started my entrepreneurial journey. This was 2015. Before I left, I was the company's craft beer specialist. So that's where the craft beer bug bit, because before then I was more mainstream beer brewer. And I started a brewery called Brew Hogs, which is based here in Johannesburg in South Africa, in Kailami. So there was 5 of us in partnership. And then 2 years later, I left that and then started my own brewery, which was the first Black female-owned craft brewery in the country. And that was back in 2018, 2019. We got funding from one of the government entities to set up the brewery. And 2020 happened. And that was obviously a very tough time. We ended up having to close down the brewery, but then pivoted and actually continued with Tolokazi, the brand. So at the moment, I've been working for the past 2 years growing Tolokazi, the brand, which is actually a brand that for me celebrates Africa. I think everything that I've done actually has been about celebrating women, celebrating Africa, celebrating African ingredients, and just showcasing to the world, that we here, we exist, and we're doing amazing things. So yeah, that's in summary.
Yeah, and I think you've left out about, you were head of the various kind of trade bodies, and you like you said,
Yes.
there's a list of stuff there that's just longer than my arm. So, but
Yeah, so I've been involved in the industry for quite a while. I was the chairperson of the Institute of Brewing and Distilling Africa section. Founded was one of the founding members of the Craft Brewers Association of South Africa, and I was the founding chair of the Beer Association of South Africa, and the African um, was agricultural entrepreneurs. So I've been involved in quite a few organizations, and still am involved in a few. And this year actually wanting to start a few more, because I think there's quite a lot of gap where, as entrepreneurs within the industry, we sort of like all pulling in different directions. And something that I want to focus on this year within the continent, that we have craft breweries starting to grow within the continent, but everyone is starting from scratch. Whereas within Africa, there's so many collaborations and learnings we can share, and we seem not to have a platform to do that, and that's something that actually one of my to-do lists for this year.
yeah, if I'm right, uh, and correct me if I am wrong, but South Africa has the majority of the craft breweries in the continent, I think.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Is there? Do you think is there a reason for that? Is that because South African breweries was located there and it fed out, or how? Why do you think South Africa itself has many? And I think it's still relatively small compared to, percentage wise, compared to say the US or something like that.
Yeah, so we before the pandemic, we were sitting to close to 200 craft breweries across the country, and a few closed down, including mine. And now we're down to probably about 150, 160, and majority of them located, I think, close to probably like 60% of them are in the Western Cape, which is where Cape Town is. And that's linked to actually tourism, because Western Cape is where there's a lot of tourists coming through. That's where Table Mountain is, where it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the country. And we also have I mean, it's well known for the wine industry, and I think it's probably one of the reasons, you notice that in many other countries, where if a country is well known for its like wine or any other beverages, that with the craft wave, it's easier to pick up, because you already have people coming in to experience, and are already used to like trying different things, and knowing that with any product there can be varieties, there can be more than just one dominating player, and I think that's helped us a lot. And also in South Africa, if you look at its growth compared to other countries in the continent, it's been one of the fastest growing countries coming out of 1994. There's been a lot of growth and change within the country that has fueled a lot of that growth also. And if you look at the country that's got the second most number of craft breweries, which is Kenya, it's similar, where there's a lot of economic growth, and a higher number of people that are at a higher LSM or higher can afford more things, are looking for experiences, and that's what craft beer drinkers typically are across, I think, across many countries.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned the tourism side of it, because I still come back, way back. We had Killarney Brewing here, and I don't know, you probably don't know, but Killarney is a major tourist town here. It's a major attraction. And what he was telling me as well, the brewer, is that at first he couldn't get into the local pubs. He just like the local pubs wouldn't, until it was all the tourists kept asking for the local beer, and then they had to
Mm.
stock them because. But the locals weren't looking for it, and the pubs weren't stocking it. It's just because he was asked that the tourists demanded it. So then that led from there. And that sounds like it's kind of at least some of the start of what got you started there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it goes from there to, as you said, to the locals start drinking it, and if you have a higher income than average income, then obviously there's more people can afford to buy it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, because what I found interesting, like since we were talking about the craft and the traditional brewing that time, like I said, it's nearly a year and a half ago now. I've talked to the number of brewers across Africa as well, and Kweza, Kalawa in Senegal, 254 in Kenya, who else was it? Benange in Uganda, and
Mm.
yeah, so like they're all seem to be growing, but they are pretty much, except maybe for Kenya, like you said, like there's only one or two craft breweries in each country, really. So it is really at a very early level. But I think what's happening is they are to a large extent focusing on they're not focused on like what the Americans will be on, pure IPAs, and that there's a lot more kind of local influence. And I know that's what you're doing is you keep trying to use local ingredients and use African ingredients to make something that isn't just a copy of somewhere else.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me it's always been about I think when the industry started, obviously we had to follow trends, and in South Africa we follow a lot of the American trends and European trends. I mean, everyone, well, like with the IPAs, milkshake IPAs, and all the variations of them. But for me, it's always been about how do we start our own trend? Um how do we create our own identity as brewers within the continent? What do we want to be known for? We want to be known for making another vice beer, whereas Germans make, I mean, like that's what they've been doing for centuries, and that's their style. So why should we then try and just make it like try to be the same? Well, how about we, if we're to use those beer styles, but how do we make it? How do we own it so that it becomes a version of our own? It represents who we are. And for me, also talks to when people visit our country and our continent, that we want them to remember the experience. We want them to come back for more. And I think for me, the beverages, the beers, and what we offer, other than the food and the beautiful clothes and the dancing and all our beautiful safaris and all the stuff, is combination can actually create a representation of who we are and what we have to offer.
Yeah,
And that's what I've been focusing on in the last year.
yeah, I could see that. I mean, you've had the hashtag, but even Tolokazi, as you said, like it's very much comes from your clan, and it has the design around. It's not, it's using the can design and the stuff to educate people as well. It's not kind of in your face like this is something, but it's something that you pick up and you'd ask, where does the design come from? Where does the name come
What
from?
is the main is.
And that leads people into discovering more then. And
Yeah.
that is, I mean, Talakazi itself, it's obviously you're primarily in South Africa, but you're also now, eh, as of Christmas or so, you're kind of distributing in the UK as well, aren't you?
Yes. So I think actually the relationship started during the pandemic in 2020. And it was through LinkedIn. And so I was just sharing, my journey and, what was happening in South Africa, in terms of the lockdowns, and because we had one of the toughest lockdown in the world. We were total shutdown where we were not allowed to brew, to sell, to distribute anything for a few months. So it was a very, very tough time. And in that, I actually got to connect with James, one of the founders of BR52, which is a subscription based distribution model in a company based in the UK. And what they do, they actually curate mixed cases for their members, and they source beers from different parts of the world. So, and then in our conversations, I started explaining to him, look, what I wanted to achieve with the brand, that I want Tolokazi to be a brand for that represents Africa in Africa, but also represent Africa outside of the continent. And then he liked the story and the brand story, and we actually brewed our first beer in 2021, a sorghum pilsner. So it was actually one of my main lines, and it got very good reviews. And then last year we actually signed a 3-year distribution deal, which is starting this year. And so I decided to actually launch something different and unique, which was the Marula Farmhouse Ale. So Farmhouse Ale saisons are actually one of my favorite styles, and I wanted to use that as and use the marula fruit, which is currently one of my favorites at the moment. A very underrepresented fruit, but there's actually a brand that's made the fruit very popular across the globe. I don't know if you've tried it, the amarula liqueur.
No,
You've
I
never, yeah. It's if you go to any South African shop anywhere in the world, that's one alcoholic product you'll
haven't.
find. And so for me it was to actually sort of like kind of, I think, right on there to say, people already are familiar with it. Now let me just take it a next step and put it in a beer. And we brewed in Belgium. So the beer we actually brewed it at Beer Select. So I thought, let me try what your Belgians are known for, and see whether I can actually bring some African influence in the style, and see what the feedback is from the consumers. And I mean, so far from the reviews, obviously there's some people who rave about it, who love it so much, and then there are very, very few that. But they would typically say it's not my style,
Yeah.
and they're forgiven for that. But the people that enjoy the style are actually quite pleased with how the product came out.
Okay. So the Belgium side, was that? I mean, I guess that was just purely kind of a cost and not shipping costs and stuff. That was the reason it
Yeah.
was done in Belgium and stuff. So did you go to Belgium? Did you how like what was it like to have to go to Belgium and then try and set up the brewing of it and with something that maybe they're not so familiar with?
Yeah, so it was actually also my first time in Belgium, so it was an opportunity to also see the beautiful country, and see as they call it, the capital of beer.
Yeah,
So it was a process. I mean, it took us a few months because from the recipe formulation and working with the brewmaster at the brewery, making sure that we are aligned in terms of the ingredients. Because I use sorghum as one of the cereals. Trying to source that, and also the marula itself. So it was a bit of a challenge, to try source the raw materials and the hops, because for me, my beers are all using South African hops and all the other ingredients. So trying to coordinate all those logistics, which obviously proved quite costly. So I kind of had to, for example, with the hops, I was like, okay, it's fine. Let's try find a something similar, a novel hop that is available in the area. But for me, the sorghum had to be in there, the marula had to be in there. So there's certain ingredients that are core to the brand and the beer and itself that had to be in there. And the trip to Belgium was very exciting, and spending the time at the brewery and meeting a lot more people and actually tasting, because I've also got time to visit other breweries in the area and taste different beers, which was quite fun.
yeah. I mean, there are a lot of breweries in Belgium.
No,
They've,
I
there's
didn't even touch. I just did one, two, three. I was like, I actually need to probably spend a whole month here.
I think even longer than that. But yeah, even I mean, okay, an awful lot of them are still they're owned by AB InBev. They're just brands. But even outside of that, like there's just so many people just brew kind of in all over the place. But Yeah, so I mean, so that was a 3 year. You said a start of a 3 year deal.
Yes, yes, yeah. So
So is that
it's
going to be one beer a year or multiple beers a year? Or
so at the moment we're going to be doing the current beer for the year of 2024. And it's actually going to be part of BR52's welcome box. So they're doing beers of the world mixed case. So they've got some beers from New Zealand, my Tolokazi from Africa. They've got a brewery coming in from, I think they've got a brewery from Argentina. So it's really a mixed case that celebrates different parts of the beer world. And when people subscribe to BR52, so that's going to be like their welcome pack for the year of 2024, because every month they've got a different theme. Every month is a different theme box, but our box is going to be part of that for the year. And then we'll see, sort of like how the beer performed, whether we want to continue with it or create something else. And I think for me, it's probably I'll create something else just to um um you know have more people talk about try to figure out, like you said earlier, what is it? Where is it coming from? Why is it like that? And then I think from my discussions with the guys at BF22 is they're also looking at expanding outside of the UK into the EU. And hopefully that will also then open up, you know, more opportunities for Tolokazi to get to more people's throats.
right, and is that kind of where you see your growth coming from? Is all outside of Africa, or do you still see a lot? Because I know, like, you've also opened a tap room, I think, haven't you?
Yes, yes. I recently opened a tap room in Soweto. So Soweto is one of the famous, one of the big townships in South Africa. Actually, my tap room is like a street away from the famous street called Vilakazi Street in Soweto, which is where Nelson Mandela's house is, and Desmond Tutu's house is. So they've got like it's one of those the two Nobel
Yeah,
Prize winners in one street, and it's like a very busy tourist attraction site. So it's actually aligned, and the reason why I moved there also for me, because then it aligns with where the direction I want to take the brand, that it becomes in part of the tourism offering. And yeah, and looking to grow also in the country, but looking for opportunities everywhere, I guess. It's one of those things that you're gonna have to try it all and see
yeah.
which one works out.
So it's
you
not
know
it's not a kind of a you don't have a big set strategy. It's just kind of take the opportunity as you see it and see
yeah.
run with it as long as you can.
Yes, I think for me, as the bigger goal or the North Star is, it's celebrating Africa through beer.
Okay, and that
Celebrating Africa Trippier in Africa, outside of Africa, and how that unpacks or unravels as time goes by. I am not 100% sure yet, but at the moment, I'm just enjoying the ride and hoping that, I get to celebrate Africa through beer.
right, yeah. I mean that ties in with all the other stuff. Like I said, I was talking to various other African brewers, and basically everyone knew you. Like you were involved in everyone's brewery somehow or other. So you seem to be spending your time traveling the whole continent at least, and just visiting people and helping them set up a brewery.
Yes, yeah. It's. I mean, for me, it's. I believe this whole ideology, if you wanna call it, I'm not gonna be able to achieve it by myself. It requires everyone else. I mean, it's all even if you look at Johannesburg, where I am, it's so big. I could never get to everyone. Now, if you look at the continent as a whole, it is huge. I mean, like, there's certain countries in the continent that I've never been to. And for me to sort of like say this is my thing only, it's not gonna really work. I feel the more of us who are involved, the more of us who talk about it, the more we actually gonna celebrate Africa together and continue to grow and start having more. I think for me, seeing more breweries opening up and more people seeing the opportunity within the industry.
Yeah, because I suppose it comes back to what we were talking about like that time about traditional brewing. I mean, traditional brewing, from what I understand, is still it's still maybe the majority of brewing across the continent.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I remember it was Benange were telling me like they estimate 60% of the beer drunk in Uganda is home brewed essentially, or traditionally brewed, or it's outside of the whole commercial scene. So one, I suppose there's a huge opportunity, but two, how do you balance that? I mean, that is a whole tradition, it's a whole culture, and then is it at risk by, or is it benefiting from having this kind of craft scene as well? Or did you worry that maybe you're going to end up kind of killing it somehow, or that you can help it retain its cultural significance?
Yeah. Now for me, it's around a bit of both. So in South Africa, for an example, we having a lot of urbanization. We A lot of people are moving away from the traditional settings and spending more time in the big cities, and you see that in most of the big in the more developed countries. So what is happening is that people are we're losing that culture or that heritage. For example, with our traditional African beer, mqombothi, people are young ladies are not spending that much time in the villages with the grandparents, with the mothers, to actually be ensure that the tradition is being passed on, and the young men don't want to be seen to be drinking the the murky. They want to be seen holding a green bottle with a clear beverage that is crisp and cold, like the person they saw on TV. So you're starting to see a lot of that. And for me, it's about what can we do to sort of preserve some elements of that tradition. Even though people are getting modernized and moving away and thinking that they are more woke. Like, but how do we how do we continue, how do we evolve, as communities, and people evolve, and you know how do I make sure that the beer also moves with those times, not to replace the traditional beers, but to carry elements of that into the future, and that's where I see myself.
Yeah, because I suppose it is like it is really a balancing act, because you don't you can't freeze. Like, culture evolves, like you said. I mean, culture doesn't just freeze, so then the beer is going to change. But it's yeah, you don't want to freeze it, but you don't want to kill it either. And the commercial side
Yeah.
is, it is I can see it's a tricky thing. And then, I mean, you see it even in kind of Northern Europe, like Norwegian farmhouse brewing and Lithuanian. They're still traditional brewing the way they used to, but it's just about hanging in there. And then when it's gone is when people value it. It's you know
Yeah. Yeah, and then we kind of go back in circle, and then we
but
that's humankind.
yeah, but then it's trying to revive it, and then it's never quite the same. And yeah, it's a tricky thing. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's yeah, it's a thing that you're not trying to preserve rural Africa as it is and never changing. It has to change, as
Yeah,
every other culture does. So then you just, yeah, what can you do to keep these elements of it alive, and at least an awareness and an appreciation, and yeah, reflecting that in your, like you said, using sorghum, using marula. Is there anything else then that you're trying to bring in from there into your beers as well, or is it like, what other elements do you think can come in? Is there any kind of technical elements in addition to the ingredients, or
yeah. No, at the moment I've been focused on the ingredients, and also through, because I also have a non-profit organization where I usually host a Mkomboti brewing competition,
okay?
which then focuses more on the preserving the traditional way of brewing. We like for example, this year planning to roll it out across the country,
Okay.
where in different communities actually make sure that we're getting the technical or the actual brewing itself, the methodology itself, to be actually passed on.
Okay.
And then I've also been working closely with some universities, because we also currently have a wave of academics who are doing research on the topic, and trying to learn more on, for example, the yeast itself, because the brewing is a wild fermentation. So what yeast strain is that? Is it one yeast strain? What yeast strains are there? What bacteria is it? And
Okay.
looking at the different tribes also within South Africa, who are all doing it differently. To say people in the northern part of the continent, in the northern part of the country, how do they differ from people in the eastern part of the country? So there's quite a lot of interest in the academic space, on the topic. And there's also, I know there's some students who are doing masters and PhD work on actually still doing the traditional method, but seeing how we can actually commercialize that product, and keep it sort of the same. So that's some of the things that are actually also quite involved with, and looking at possibly ideas of like new products or new ways of doing things, or as we grow, how do we all grow together?
Right. Yeah. The reason I was asking is because I was thinking Jesse and Quays. I was saying that they're, as far as I know, the only brewery that's using some like 80 to 90% sorghum. And she was saying like because if you use more than, I don't know what percentage it was, 20% or something, normally people are adding in enzymes, but they're able to do it because they were using a traditional malting method, including
Yeah,
dry bananas, and that was, it's a traditional method, and somehow or other that brings in the enzymes that are needed, whereas everyone else is kind of adding
yeah.
commercial enzymes. So I was wondering whether there's some way of using elements like that.
Yeah. No, it's not something that I personally have looked into, but when I was in Rwanda, it was also one of those fascinating things for me, because theory says one thing. I mean, the beer books say one thing, that you can't, if you're using sorghum, you have to use enzymes, and seeing the guys in Rwanda being able to make IPAs and lagers and wide range of different beers, without adding any external enzymes, but just all natural, traditional way throughout. It's actually, yeah, it was actually an amazing thing to see, which proves that, we, like, for me, that within Africa we have all the means and the house. It's just that most of that indigenous knowledge is it has not been documented,
Yeah.
um and it's not something that is probably, let's say, common knowledge, and even the people that are the custodians of the tradition, um maybe might not fully understand or comprehend the depth of the knowledge they hold,
Yeah.
and how that knowledge can actually be used in a commercial setting. um yeah, so, like, if, for example, we also had a marula we had a marula brewing competition early last year in like a deep rural area in one of the provinces in South Africa. And seeing people that and one of the ladies came to me, and she's like, she doesn't just brew with marula, but she brought me fruits I've never heard of in my life before, that I they just grow in that area. And she's like, no, I brewed this with this, I brewed that with that. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually, I might have been touching the surface of this thing, but this is so deep. And it is so much that still need to be uncovered and commercialized through all this, and see how do we preserve it, how do we and how do we make sure people actually, because in South Africa we have a lot of, with a high level of unemployment. So my thing has always been like, we're not all going to be formally employed, but how can you take what you have and what you know and use it to generate a living for yourself, and that's what these competitions for me are about. It's about capacitating people to actually think beyond just the small surroundings.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, if you can make it popular, especially if it's always sad to say, but if you can make it popular among foreigners, it just becomes more popular inside the country. Then, like it's no matter where, no matter what country
Exactly.
you're in, people look up. But okay, so I mean, you've got all that, you've done it. Where, and like you said, you just touched on there that one of the other things you did was you were off in Rwanda helping set up a brewery there. Where are you going to go next year or this year? I suppose it is now. What have you?
Um, yeah, this year I've got a few international trips confirmed already. So I'll be judging at the World Beer Cup in Las Vegas in April. And also judging at the European Beer Star in coming to Germany again in September. I've got a trip to the UK to obviously promote the beer there, and then I've got another trip to Belgium because I need to come check on my brew. Um, and then within the continent, nothing confirmed as yet within Africa, but been talking to a few guys, and I also wanted to spend a bit more time home this year. No, last year I traveled too much, so I'm hoping to spend a little bit more time home. But we'll see. We'll see how the year goes. Still the third of the third third day of the year, so it's still early days.
So it's only day three, and you've already got about 6 months planned.
Yeah.
Uh, so how do you actually find time to brew anything?
So at the moment, I'm actually contract manufacturing. So that allows me a bit of flexibility. So I don't have to be there every day, all the time, all day. So I typically just go in, when I'm around, spend the day with the brewer, just to obviously keep check on things. But obviously, I mean, traveling. The good thing about COVID, what it showed us was that you can work anywhere in the world. You don't have to be physically there. Yeah, and I mean, because I do my beers in one brewery and I do my ciders in another brewery, so it's always trying to, you know, manage my time between the two, and obviously the Tolokazi team assisting to make sure that obviously everything is the beer quality, and we are selling and so trying to balance everything.
Okay, and then do you have a list right now of what ingredients, what beers you're planning to kind of develop over the next year, or is that still up in the air?
I'm actually have one of the we've got a beer festival here in South Africa called Clarence Beer Festival. Takes place every year around this year it's in the first weekend in March. And so as one of the festival rules, as a brewer, you kind of have to bring in something unique. Um, and so I'm doing a rooibos saison for that. That's something that definitely on my radar. And then there's a brewery that I normally do collab work with. They're based in Cape Town, in the Western Cape, Salt Barrel. So they specialize in barrel aging. So
Okay.
for the past 2-3 years, we've been doing a collaboration on actually bringing in the traditional African beer and barrel aging it. So we've been doing that collab. So that's something that we've got planned already, and seeing what other ingredients we can put in that. And yeah, and then I think for me is 2, 3 throughout the year, maybe two more um, brews that I want to try get out there. I haven't figured out yet exactly what ingredients. I was talking to some guy in who reached out from Zimbabwe, who was saying that they've got this fruit that he thinks would work well for one of my beers. So he's supposed to be sending me samples, and then I'll try that and see. So, with the work that I do and obviously talking about it, I actually get people that call up and say, "Hey, have you tried this before? Have you tried this before? Did you know about this?" And half of them I've never heard of them before, So which is quite exciting because I'm also learning in that process. So yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that you mentioned earlier. Like people, if you're using something or you know something or that, and it's just come to you, you assume everybody else knows it as well, and everybody is kind of familiar with it, and then like that, they come out and ask you, and you've never heard of the fruit, or you've never heard of this technique,
Yeah.
or it's just yeah, it's amazing how much people know without realizing that they know it. Um,
Yeah.
so and that's not just in brewing, that's in everything really. If you're familiar with it, you just assume it's common knowledge,
Everyone else,
unless
everyone
you're
has common knowledge.
then you realize and you charge a fortune. But everyone else assumes it's common knowledge. So I mean that is, I don't know how to top all it. It's a busy year. We gone from an already busy year. But it sounds exciting. I mean, will the beers outside South Africa only in this year be available through Beer 52, or do you have any other possibility to distribute them anywhere else or through someone else, or is it
So it's actually a non-exclusive deal.
okay?
So one of the reasons why I've got the trip planned to the UK is also to then uh, you know, from where, because then obviously the nice thing is that they started introducing the brand to the market. So for me, it's more to say, okay, what can I do to take it the next step? You
Okay,
know, and who can I collaborate with further? I mean, even with the trip to the US, already talking to I don't know if you know Celeste from Harlem Brewery
right,
yes. We're really talking about doing a collaboration. Because for me, that's kind of like the strategy I want to try to say, you know, being being able to enter different markets and try out the different markets, because at this stage, I'm busy trying out, see if will it work, what is required, who can I partner with, is it a worthwhile partnership, and then once you kind of get the foot in the door, it's a matter of saying, how do I now get the whole foot in, both feet in, move the whole body in, and it's gonna take time. And for me, that's my focus is on building the brand, and that's the reason why I decided to sort of outsource the production. That then I don't get tied down on being
yeah,
worried about running a brewery, but focus more on how do I get the brand out there, and all the other work that I do, whether I'm in Rwanda or wherever, at the back of everything, there's always, you know, we need to get the Tolokazi word out there, and we need to get more people to know about the brand. We need more people to enjoy it, and if they keep wanting it, then obviously happy days, and and hopefully in a few years to come, will be a real global brand that has sales like that are like millions and millions and millions of hectoliters.
and then everyone will accuse you of selling out, and then you'd be
I hope not, but yeah,
it's
we
inevitable.
never know. We never know.
It's a bad problem to have, though, wouldn't it be? All right, listen, Apiwe, thanks a million. Was there anything I should have, by the way, I should have brought up or asked? Was there something that you wanted to mention that I didn't ask you about?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered quite a lot.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so it was brilliant. So the best of luck for the year. Hopefully I will be able to taste some of those beers sometime if you're wandering around Belgium. You're possibly going to Leuven Innovation Beer Festival as well. Is that right?
Yes, yes, possibly, yeah. So I met is it Andre, I think.
Okay, I
Uh,
know Jeff
uh,
there, but
Yeah, when I was there late last year, met up with one of the guys, and yeah, so if I do crack the invite, it is on my question, but because I do have to come back to Belgium, so it's a matter of what do I come for on top of the beer. So if I've got another reason to come, then I can sort of
Okay.
like make
Well,
it a worthwhile trip. But I'll definitely when I'm planning when I once I know my dates, I will let you know, and then we can maybe see if we can meet up
yep.
for a
Well,
beer somewhere.
excellent. That would be a definite yes for me anyway. So okay, so look, I'll let you go. Like I said, you've got such a busy schedule. I better let you go and get back to doing more brand building and everything else you're doing, building your charities and I don't know. I'm still in awe of just how much you get done. So well,
No,
listen.
now I'm at home with the kids and the husband, so
All right. Well, listen, Apiwe, thanks a million for the time, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you around, and hopefully people outside of South Africa will get a good chance to taste some of the Tolokazi beers in in the next year.
thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a million. Bye.